Let's make sure that I'm on. That's good. Whether you are watching at home or are here in the sanctuary, it is so good to be with you this morning. It is so good for all of us to be together. I hope all of you had a happy holiday. Did everybody have a good holiday? Yes. I had a good holiday, but I don't need to eat again for a week. This morning is a special morning at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh. During our worship services this morning, we are celebrating this congregation's 75th anniversary. Of course, this coming Saturday evening, December 7th, we are having an even bigger celebration right here in the sanctuary. But this morning, we are looking back a little bit more closely at this congregation's history. It makes you think. It makes you think, how many sermons have been preached and listened to in this congregation's history? If you stack them all on top of the other, would they reach from the floor all the way to the ceiling? How many potlucks have there been? There probably has been enough pasta salad served to fill this sanctuary 3 feet deep. How many child dedications, weddings, and memorial services have there been? For 75 years, this congregation has been a place for people with liberal religious values to gather together to help one another live more fully, deeply, and richly. For 75 years, this congregation has been a place where people have worked together to turn our world around. We know some of the names of the people who have come and gone before us, but not all of those names. Still, each of them who were a part of this community live on through all of us who are now a part of this community, just as all of us will one day live on in the lives of those who come after us. All of our lives are intertwined together in a fabric that stretches over time and space. This morning, as we give thanks for the lives of those who have come and gone before us, let us draw inspiration and wisdom in their story. A story of how over the decades they turned a group of a little over a dozen people into a thriving congregation of more than 600 adults, youth, and children. Let their story inspire us to dream about what we might create in the next chapter of this congregation's history. Come, my friends, with our hearts open to both the challenges and the possibilities that this new day and this new week bring. With our hearts open to all that inspires, sustains, redeems, and transforms us. Come, let us worship together.
Whoa! The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. And the Adhikari family is going to light our chalice, so I'll invite Sunil and Kirsten to come up with their 3 beautiful sons, Aryan, Sahaya, and Nalan. Thank you.
Will those of you who are here in person please stand as you are able to for our chalice lighting?
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with me at this time.
As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home.
For those of you already standing, I invite you to remain standing. For 75 years, this congregation is a place where people have sought solace and peace during troubling times, as some of us do again this morning. Our opening hymn is number 388, Dona Nobis Pacem, which literally means give us peace. Our children's choir will lead us, and they're going to sing it through one time all together, and then Jean Marie is going to direct all of us on how to join in.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Ford Norn. It's my pleasure to be part of your worship team this morning. Whether you are a first-time visitor or a long-time member, I'd like to offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are and wherever you might be on your own spiritual journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us for the first time in person, I invite you to stop by our welcome stand out in the foyer if you haven't already done so. You can fill out a visitor form, pick up some information, and sign up for a name tag. And if you're visiting with us online, I invite you to fill out our online visitor form. If you do this, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter. This morning, Bill Devereaux, one of our lay ministers, will be available up here in the front corner of the sanctuary after the service to talk with anyone who might be experiencing a difficult time and just want to talk to a friend. I hope that all of you will read through the chalice that you received by email on Friday about everything happening here at UUFR. You can also check out the upcoming events section of the website, and I will just share a couple of highlights. Reverend James will be leading a newcomer gathering after our worship service this morning. It's a chance for recent visitors to meet with Reverend James, learn more about Unitarian Universalism and this congregation, and answer any questions that you might have. The gathering will take place in the music room, that's right outside these doors here, starting at about 12:30. And if you're unable to attend this gathering, Reverend Carey will be leading a newcomers gathering online this Wednesday, December 4th at 7. And you can check the chalice or the front page of the website for the Zoom link. One more announcement. Chalice circles, which are our most popular groups for adults here at UUFR, are about to start for the winter-spring session. The circles themselves begin in February, but online registration begins today. This is a wonderful way to get to know other people well and to explore your own spirituality. So again, check the chalice or the front page of the website for details on how to sign up. Our in-person social hour this morning will be downstairs in Founders Hall, and now I invite you to meet and greet your neighbor. Good morning.
How am I doing there? Okay, thank you. This is a time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and sorrows of our community. And we do this because we believe a joy shared is a joy made greater, and a sorrow or concern shared is made easier to bear. And let me share with you one very important joy this morning. At our earlier service this morning, we held a ritual of naming and dedication for Anthony Havel Zerwa, the child of Julia and James Zerwa. And here is a picture. And Anthony did just very, very well. Okay, thanks. So this morning, as we hold this joy in our heart and reflect on all of the joys, the sorrows, the fears, and the hopes of our own lives, let's now be together in a time of stillness and silence, opening ourselves to that Spirit within us and among us, called by many names, but known to every human heart, that Spirit that leads us to a fuller, deeper, richer experience of life. And after the silence, instead of singing a meditative hymn together as we usually do, the choir will sing the special piece that they sang during the first service for our child dedication. But now, let's be together in stillness and silence.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Wellens, and I'm a member of your board of directors. I'll be downstairs at social hour after worship service this morning. If you have any questions you'd like to ask me about the board, or talk to me about any concerns you may have in general. Now, everything we do at UUFR is only possible because of the generous financial support so many of us provide. For those of you who set up automated giving to UUFR or who send in a check by mail every month, I'd like to thank you now for your generosity. Once a month at UUFR, we have a special offering not to directly benefit the congregation, but to benefit a local, national, or international organization serving our larger world. The recipient of our offering this morning is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Dana Lundquist, our Family Ministry Director, will now tell us more.
Every Sunday, our preschool through fifth graders open the Wonder Box. And today, our box has, well, we usually shake it, so let me shake it so we can try to figure out what it might be. Any guesses? Yeah, what do you think? It's not frozen waffles, but you were so close. You were so close. It is a box within a box, actually. Now, does anyone recognize this box? Raise your hand if you've seen this box before. I love how many hands I am seeing up. This is a box that I have really enjoyed for over 25 years because it's not just a box, it's actually a guest at your table. And in fact, each of these boxes has a teensy-tiny little guest in it this year to help us remember. It allows you and your family, this box, to imagine that you have invited a guest at your table who is doing powerful justice work that our faith inspires us to support. Justice work that cares for the environment or victims of war, or protects trans people from dangerous laws, or helps migrants of color. And since I was a child and longer, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee gives UU families the opportunity to support this work with these boxes to collect change. You see, every day for the next month, anytime you find an extra nickel or dime, you take it and put it right in here, and you are sharing it with the guest at your table. And alongside my itsy-bitsy little guest that you have now in your box, you also will find a little piece of paper where you can actually give your guest a name of your choice and daydream about what your guest is working to do to make the world better. And you and your family then can flip it over and read the actual biographies of the justice workers that our faith is currently offering support to right now. We will collect these boxes the first Sunday of January so we can send all of our donations together. And so at this time, if you are a child or a teen, we ask you please to come up and take a box for yourself or your family. If you have siblings, you both can get a box. And if you are an adult, we ask you to consider making a donation now at the front of the sanctuary.
is UUFR?
Our congregation will be 75 years old on Saturday. It was founded on December 7th, 1949.
So how did it get started?
The first Unitarian congregations in this country were founded more than 200 years ago. Even though they were Unitarian, they were traditionally religious, more traditionally religious than most Unitarian Universalist congregations today. And almost all of them were in New England.
We believe in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, and the neighborhood of Boston.
Then, as many Americans started to move west, Unitarian congregations were started in other parts of the country, but mostly in big cities like Chicago, St. Louis, Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco. It was only after World War II that many Unitarian congregations started forming in smaller cities, including here in Raleigh in 1949.
What was life like in Raleigh in 1949?
It was a lot different.
Harry Truman had recently begun his first full term as president.
Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman in South Pacific just opened in New York City, making Some Enchanted Evening one of the greatest songs in America.
Hop Along Cassidy, television's first Western, had just begun its run on NBC for the viewing pleasure of less than 10% of American families that had televisions, which is about the same percentage, by the way, of families that had air conditioning.
The New York Yankees were on their way to beat the Brooklyn Dodgers in the World Series, and that October, closer to home, NASCAR ran its very first race in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Raleigh was a sleepy and segregated city of about 65,000 people.
But how did this congregation get started?
It all started at Wiley Elementary School in Forest Park neighborhood. Several women were having a sewing meeting.
I am an Episcopalian.
I am a Unitarian.
Then you must meet my sister. She is also a Unitarian.
The Unitarian was Harriet Dorr. The Episcopalian sister was Yola Moore.
I used to be a Unitarian someplace else, but there is no Unitarian congregation here in Raleigh.
Me too, and I miss it. We should start our own Unitarian congregation.
Let's get together, our family and friends, and have a meeting about doing that.
That year, in November, they held a meeting at the Sir Walter Raleigh Hotel in Raleigh. More than a dozen people showed up, and they agreed to start a congregation together. The small congregation was officially recognized by the American Unitarian Association on December 7th, 1949.
Where did everybody meet after that?
At first, they met in people's homes, and then they rented rooms at NC State and other various places.
I forgot. Where are we meeting this Sunday?
Oh, we're meeting at the YMCA.
Eventually, the congregation decided it needed its own place to meet, and it famously started with just a single penny.
I am starting our fundraising right now by throwing this penny into this ashtray.
After several years of saving money, the congregation had enough money in 1959. The congregation bought a house at 119 Hawthorne Road.
Just a regular old house?
Just a regular house. But according to the neighborhood rumor mill, the people who lived there before ran a numbers racket. So the neighbors were a little suspicious of their new Unitarian neighbors. With their own building, the congregation kept growing. So eventually, the congregation decided it needed an even bigger building. So the congregation built Peace Hall here on Wade Avenue.
The big red building next door where the children and youth meet?
That's Peace Hall. When the building was finally ready, the entire congregation had a procession, which is like a parade, from Hawthorne Road to Peace Hall, carrying the congregation's most important possessions.
We are going to reenact that procession now, so all of the children and youth among us are invited to go to the back corner of the sanctuary with Tina and David and gather some important possessions and proceed up to the front while the rest of us sing, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are." We're going to sing this through once together and then break into parts and sing it as a round. Let's begin.
Mike, thanks. Peace Hall was where the congregation held its worship services every Sunday morning. That's where a lot of weddings and memorial services took place, too.
Hi, my name is Larry.
Hi, my name's Jerry.
You're kind of cute, and our names rhyme. You want to get married?
Oh, sure.
Larry and Jerry Meisner had one of the first wedding ceremonies in Peace Hall. Since they were youth group advisors then, the youth served as ushers for their wedding. But with another new building, the congregation kept growing, and soon enough,
It needed an even bigger building.
that's right. But there was a problem.
We want to build a new building that's 2 stories, but right now we only have enough money for 1 story.
I got an idea. Let's build the bottom floor first. When we got enough money, we can just add a second floor on top of it.
Great idea.
So that's what the congregation did. First, the congregation built the lower level of this building. For many years, the congregation used the lower part of this building as its new sanctuary.
Where we have social hour now?
That's right. And then the congregation built the upper level of this building. John Manifold was a member of this congregation that helped make sure the construction went right. He spent almost every day here at UUFR for an entire year.
My name is John Manifold. That wall plate is a different shade of beige.
When this congregation first got started, what were the worship services like? Were they the same as today?
At the beginning, the congregation didn't have worship services. The congregation didn't even meet on Sunday mornings. Instead, it met on weeknights.
What did people do when they got together?
More than anything else, Unitarians in the 1950s liked discussing things. But Yola Moore, one of the founders, wanted something more religious. So they started having Sunday services once a month in 1956. Many Sundays, they just read mimeographed copies of sermons that ministers in other Unitarian congregations had written.
This guy's prose is rather purplish.
It's getting all over your fingers.
Other Sundays, people in the congregation came up with other ideas for worship service. There was a lot of variety, and every week was different.
What should I put in the newsletter about this week's service?
Call it the Great Mystery. What it's going to be about's a mystery, but I'm sure it's going to be great.
What kind of songs did the congregation sing?
The congregation didn't start singing hymns together until 1965, 9 years after it had its first worship service.
What about lighting a chalice at the beginning of service?
The congregation didn't start lighting chalice until the 1980s.
What about the minister?
For 30 years, this congregation didn't have a minister. Members did everything themselves. Eventually, some people thought that the congregation needed a minister, but not everybody.
I think it's about time we get a minister.
A minister? We do not need a stinking minister. A minister's going to tell us what to do, and we don't need anybody telling us what to do. Plus, we would have to pay them.
Well, I think you've got a point there, but I mean, You okay? Oh, who's gonna do the memorial service for him? Maybe we do need a minister.
And that's how the congregation decided to get its first minister. They didn't want somebody to lead worship services every Sunday, but they wanted somebody who could lead memorial services when people died.
Who was the congregation's first minister?
I am the Reverend Francis West, and I will be your first minister.
What is that around your neck? You look like some sort of religious person. I don't like that.
Some people were happy to have a minister, but some people still weren't. They only allowed Reverend Frances to speak 2 times a month, and they made a rule that she couldn't wear any vestments like a robe or a stole. The congregation's first few ministers only stayed for a few years each, but in 1987, the congregation called the Reverend Morris Hudgens as its minister. Reverend Morris was known for giving very intellectual academic sermons.
Today's sermon will be about the transcendental movement in the first half of the 19th century and the transcendentalist understanding of God.
But it was under Reverend Morris's leadership that the congregation grew to more than 500 members for the first time. Reverend Morris stayed with the congregation for 11 years. After Reverend Morris, many ministers came and went, but none stayed for more than 5 years. They often started off well, but after a while, the congregation and lead ministers sometimes didn't get along very well.
It's good to see you.
But since Reverend James came in 2019, the board and Reverend James have been working hard to figure out how to have a good relationship and figure out how to make important decisions together.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Besides the lead minister, there have also been a lot of assistant ministers, intern ministers, music directors, and other staff. Marge Link, who was our congregation's 3rd religious education director, is still a member of UUFR today. From its earliest days, the congregation has tried to be welcoming to all people. When the congregation was first founded in 1949, Raleigh was still a segregated city. That meant that Black people weren't allowed to live in the same parts of the city as white people, go to the same schools, or even eat at the same restaurants. They also mostly went to different churches. This was very unfair, and many members of the new Unitarian congregation wanted things to be different, especially in their new congregation. At one of the congregation's first meetings, the members made a very important decision.
My name is L.H. Job, and I would like to read you part of my the proposed bylaws. Now, any person may become a voting member.
Excuse me. What does any mean?
Any means any.
The congregation hasn't always done a perfect job of being welcoming to all people, but it's been an important ideal from the congregation's very beginning. The congregation has also tried to make a difference in the larger community.
I don't make a lot of money, and it's so hard to find an affordable place here in Raleigh.
Me neither. I wish there was an affordable place to live where people of different races could live together.
In the 1960s, the congregation created a partnership with 4 other congregations, 3 predominantly black and 1 predominantly white. The congregations raised money to build the Rich Park Apartments, which provided 100 apartments to low-income individuals and families. Starting in 1970, people of different races started moving into these apartments, and low-income people still live in these apartments today. UUFR tried to do other things to make the world a better place, too.
I have a gay son, and I wish there was a place that I could go to talk to other parents with gay children.
You could chat with people online.
It's the 1980s, and the internet hadn't been invented yet.
That's true. I heard there's a chapter of PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, that meets at the Unitarian congregation.
UUFR was one of the first 2 congregations in Raleigh to be welcoming to LGBTQ plus people. The congregation hosted a PFLAG chapter, made its space available for other groups, and its ministers officiated at blessing ceremonies years before same-sex marriage became legal. And just like UUFR today does a lot to help immigrants and refugees, during the 1980s, it helped support a refugee family from Vietnam.
Do you think UUFR is more the same or more different after 75 years?
In many ways, it's very different. It used to be only about a dozen people or so, and now it's more than 600 adults, youth, and children. It used to meet at the YMCA. Now it has 2 big buildings in its own campus. It used to not sing hymns or have many rituals, and now it does. It used to not have any paid staff. Now it has a minister and more than a dozen paid staff members. I'm sure it will continue to change in many ways in the future. But some things are still the same. Since its earliest days, UUFR has always tried to be welcoming to all people, make enough room for them when they showed up, and try to make the world a better place. It always has had committed members who are willing to dream big and work together to make the dreams for this congregation come true.
I hope that never changes, no matter how old our congregation gets.
Me too.
Let's show all of our players a little bit more appreciation. Let's give a hand to the fabulous playwright, whoever that might have been. And now will you please stand for our closing hymn this morning. Our closing hymn this morning is number 168, One More Step. As we end this time of worship together, may we do so with ever more love for ourselves and for one another, with ever more gratitude for this precious gift of life that we share with one another this very day, with ever more peace in our hearts, and with ever more hope for our own lives in this world we share.